Hi everyone, hopefully you can hear me as part of the breakout session. So welcome everyone. Our breakout session, so I'm Kate Elder, those of you that have probably just heard me on the live stream, a consultant here in CGI's Emerging Technology Practice. This breakout session, we're going to explore over the next half an hour or so, smart cities, are they an opportunity or a challenge? And we're going to have a debate. I'm joined by my colleagues Ian Diver and Paul Earnshaw. I can ask you both just to introduce yourselves. Ian, would you like to go first?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Ian Diver. On the screen I can see a little window which says Harry Cook at the bottom, but my name's Ian. I'm a director consulting here at CGI, working on the Internet of Things and smart cities in particular.
Thanks. And Paul, if I can just ask you to go next. What's a presentation without a few technical gremlins? I'm just going to try and share my screen again.
Okay, so yeah, I'm Paul Earnshaw. I've been with CGI for 16 years. I'm a director of innovation and research, research lab into all things emerging technology.
Perfect, thank you both. So I'll move us on then. So we're going to, as part of this breakout session, we're going to have a debate. So Ian and Paul are going to put for and against arguments against each of the three questions that you can see on screen. So first off, we're going to tackle, are smart cities environmentally friendly? And then we're going to ask, is everyone living in a smart city involved and able to access it? And then finally, we're going to look at, are smart cities safer for residents? And as part of the debate, if you want to listen closely, we're going to ask you for your opinion after each question. So we're going to keep it really tight on timings. I know the organisers here are keeping us to everyone to schedule. So perhaps if we can take the first question then, are smart cities environmentally friendly? Ian, do you want to give us 3 minutes on the for argument, please?
Yes, certainly, Kate. Thanks. So my answer to this one is a strong yes. I believe we can use this technology, and more importantly, that data that we've heard about in earlier sessions, which that technology collects in a smart city, to become the environmentally friendly society that we like to be. Here's a couple of examples. If you live in a city, then you'll be exposed probably on a daily basis to dangerous and illegal levels of air pollution. And according to the World Health Organization, 9 out of 10 of us globally are in that position. It doesn't have to be like that. So with a ubiquitous IoT, we can have a network of low-cost sensors, one on every lamppost, if you like, which can generate the data to not only manage but to avoid that situation. So imagine this: if you suffer from asthma or a respiratory condition, then when you wake up, your phone can advise you whether it's sensible to walk to work, cycle to work, get the bus, or whether indeed you need to stay at home today. On the prevention side, if you're driving into the city, the transport planner with a real-time map of environmental conditions on that day can actually adjust your route, can adjust the road tariff, the price that you pay to drive into the city. And maybe certain routes you won't be able to go down because neighborhood streets could be blocked off by automatic bollards to make it safe for kids to walk to school, like I did when I was a kid. Another example, Kate mentioned net zero. I guess a lot of this does come down to personal choice, doesn't it? But let's keep in mind that 1/4 of UK CO2 emissions actually come from ourselves, from heating our homes. So at CGI, I've worked on the smart meter infrastructure that we have in the UK. If you've already got a smart meter, you'll know you can use it to spot those high consumption appliances in your home. And then the all-electric home of the future, you'll be able to run your appliances, charge your electric car using off-peak tariffs, which not only saves you money, but spreads the load on the grid to reduce the need for non-renewables to cut in for peak time generation. And it's all about the data, isn't it? So in a smart city, you'll have the data to choose based on the savings it might make you when it's the right time to take out your gas boiler, go for a heat pump. And maybe in the future we'll have gamified data sharing schemes. Who uses the least electricity in my street? How come the Joneses next door, same size house as me, that they use half as much as I do? What can I learn from that? And we all keep our houses too warm. We don't bother to turn down our thermostat at 8 a.m. in the morning when the sun starts to shine outside. If we're going to keep to 2 degrees as an average temperature rise, we're going to have to turn down our thermostats. Why not let your smart home to do it, or even some external agency?
Thanks, Ian. Just in the interest of time, we've got 3 questions, and I'm interested to hear Paul's argument again. I'm quite liking the idea of going into competition with my neighbour on my energy use, but perhaps Paul, you can pick up the thread and talk to us, give us the against argument.
Yeah, so I've no doubt that energy management and IoT and smart cities can help with energy management in a sort of an isolated way. But I'm kind of reminded of the introduction of catalytic converters in the 1990s. Any of you that are old enough to know that will know that before that, cars had no catalytic converter and belched out all sorts of noxious gases and all the rest of it. And everybody hailed catalytic converters as the great way of reducing environmental pollution. About 10, 15 years after they were introduced, somebody pointed out that where does all this platinum palladium come from that's used in a catalytic converter? Oh, dug out of the ground in South Africa in a really obnoxious, polluting and environmental disaster of a mine. And you go, well, yeah, it's sort of an out of sight, out of mind type mentality. And so my primary concern with explosion of IoT and of the demand for electric vehicles is, yeah, it's great, it's absolutely great, but it all require lithium or cadmium batteries. And there are some estimates that there are going to be 10 trillion IoT devices, mostly relying on batteries by 2030. And if you think about it, lithium is mined in some of the most sensitive ecosystems in the world, in Northern Australia, Western Australia, in the Atacama Desert in Chile. And the complete lack of recycling of availability of lithium and cadmium type batteries. And so you've got this whole sort of like, let's just shift the problem somewhere else and let's claim that our city is really environmentally friendly. And the second concern is the sort of reliance on renewable energies to gain those efficiency. Yeah, it's great, we're using wind farms, we're using photovoltaic. But you've got to remember that there is an inherent cost in developing photovoltaic cells, and there's an inherent ecological impact of wind farms, which is only just beginning to be understood. So while the city is benefiting from all of those technologies, other places are bearing the brunt of it. So I think in realistic terms, my conclusion is that while a smart city may look like it's environmentally friendly, we have to really consider it in a holistic way, or we'll end up in the same position as we did with catalytic converters. So there we go.
Okay, thanks, Paul. So we're going into competition with a neighbour on our home energy use, but we need to think about the batteries in our cars. So everyone in the audience then, so if you grab your smartphones again, scan the QR code, or if you visit slido.com, #CGI Smart Cities, hopefully you've still got it open from the main presentation. So we're interested in your vote. Do you think smart cities are environmentally friendly? You've got a yes or a no option. Perhaps you think it depends on some of the initiatives that are taking place, or if you're not sure, even after hearing our arguments, perhaps you could choose that as an option. I'm hoping that you can see my screen, and this should build dynamically as people start to access the poll. So again, the QR code is on the bottom left of the screen. If you scan that with the camera on your phone, or you can visit slido.com, #CGI Smart Cities. We've got even split. Oh, we nearly had even split. Yes, no. It depends is winning at the moment, 75%. We'll just give it a minute. So 22% of you say yes, smart cities are environmentally friendly. you're sold on that argument. 67%, it depends, and a few still not sure. Okay, we'll move us on. Put your phones away. We're going to do this poll after each question. We're interested in your point of view as we work through this. We'll feed this back to the organisers as well. So next question then, and Ian, I will come to you first for the pro argument. So is everyone living in a smart city involved and able to access it?
Yeah, I know I'm supposed to be the optimist in this debate, Kate, but this one does worry me. So in our country, we have a digital divide, and coronavirus has made this very, very plain, hasn't it? Did you know that for households with an annual income of less than £10,000, about half of them have a home internet connection? That's 99% for households with an income of more than 40,000. So and I think there's a clear link there between inequality and digital exclusion. So, for example, when children were being taught at home during the pandemic, there were 700,000 11 to 18-year-olds, that's 1 in 8, who didn't have home internet access from a computer or tablet. So if we let that continue, digital exclusion will start to perpetuate itself, and our children will be denied opportunities by the continuing move to online. It's not just the kids. More than 30% of over 65s lack digital skills. 25% of registered disabled people are completely offline, compared to 6% in the overall population. So what that means is, if you're a city planner and you're using data sets that were acquired online, then those groups probably are underrepresented. So there's a risk that they get left behind or forgotten in decision making. As well as underuse, there's the risk of misuse. So we live in the era of big tech. So globally, there are a few large companies who control vast amounts of data. We're wielding a lot of power over us and our societies. The data is the new oil, isn't it? AI is the future, but now we begin to see the data sets that are used to train those AIs. We learn that there's racial bias, there's gender bias. I'm supposed to be the optimist, aren't I? So I need to offer a solution. So for me, this isn't my idea, but other people have talked about the idea of data commons. So in the same way as if we have a park or a green space in a city, we can manage that for everybody for the common good. And I was very struck by Lizzie's rich picture earlier on. Can we have that legal, that technical, that social framework that enables us to manage our data as a shared resource? But to make that real, if I was, would I be willing personally to share some of my medical data with researchers to make a better vaccine? Yes, I would. I'm not quite so sure how I'd feel, though, if there was then a big pharma that was selling that back to the NHS at a large profit. So for me, I'm willing to share my data, but I need to know on a case-by-case basis the purpose to which it's being put.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Sounds not sure. So, Paul, what have you got for us that can counter Ian's?
So I think Ian has played heavily into my hands there, hasn't he? In terms of, there are lots of things around this. My primary concern is the cost of entry, like Ian was saying, the reliance or the assumption of smartphone devices. I worry if we move towards like a cashless society and cryptocurrencies, because that just massively discriminates against elderly people and the less fortunate in society. Those are things that people who are young and affluent can possibly get into. And that sort of worry extends to there's a fact that there's some sort of inherent opt-in culture where you override your individual concerns or your individual status as a citizen. I mean, we've seen during the pandemic just means when we have a forced adoption of restrictive practices. You know, the fact that I could have been made a criminal for actually going to Wales is an amazing thing in my lifetime, and that sort of the idea that you could impose that sort of thing is quite worrying when you think about what a municipal authority could start to do in a city if they so choose. there's a big question regarding those who can't give consent. So children are a massive issue there, aren't they? And severely disabled or impaired. You know, I worry about the fact that a 17-year-old girl 10 days off her birthday is still a child as far as the law is concerned. But from an AI perspective and trying to identify how old somebody is from a camera, that's not easy. So you've got an inherent issue around age and consent and all those sorts of things. And there's also a sort of an assumption that progress is progress for everybody. I quite imagine that if you went to some elements of society, maybe some more elderly people or maybe young mothers with children, and ask them, do you want more frequent access to public toilets, or would you rather have a smart car park, or rather have, God forbid, an internet connected smartphone operated toilet? I'm pretty sure they'd just say, I want access to the services. I just want access to the toilet. I don't need it to be smart, and I don't need it to be thing. And so some people will have thought, hey, that's great, and it's saving us money because we've now got data on how often it's used, and we can work out how often to clean it and all that sort of thing. But from an individual's perspective, I don't believe that that's particularly. So it's so my conclusion, I think, is that I worry that it creates, in danger of creating an elitist society for those who have opted in or walked into it without thinking about it, against those who either can't or don't particularly want to opt into it.
Okay, thanks Ian, thanks Paul. Sounds like there's a lot of pros and cons involved in this one. There's a bit of thought required. So everyone, phones at the ready again. We're just going to poll you. What do you think? What side of the debate are you coming on? Is everyone living in a smart city involved and able to access it? So we've got a clear no so far. Just while we're waiting for responses to come in, Paul, your audio is ever so slightly dipping in and out. Perhaps you can just reset your headset or something when we come to the next question. So we're still on 100% no at the moment. We'll just give it another minute or two, and then in the interest of time, we'll move on to our next question. It depends again. I think this is what we're hearing, isn't it? There's two sides to the debate, and there's not necessarily any clear decision either way, although maybe we've got 75% no so far. So we're coming down on the against side. It depends, 43%. Perhaps if we mitigate some of the factors that we've discussed, that may change people's minds. Still majority no. Okay. Thanks everyone for participating. We're going to ask you this question again after our next debate, and then we're going to sum up at the end and ask you for your key takeaways. So keep your phones handy. So our next question then, and Paul, perhaps I'll come to you first this time. Are smart cities safer for residents? Paul, which side of the fence are you coming down on this time?
Right, so hopefully my microphone is working a bit better now, but I still worry in terms of what we consider safer. I've got privacy concerns about who is collecting the data and reason. And as Ian said in the previous thing, how is that being commercialized? I wonder about whether it's safety for the whole or safety for the individual. Now, the example that I give is that, yeah, in a smart city, we can dim the lights at night so that we save money. But if there's a single female walking home at night down the road and all the lights have been dimmed, that's probably not safety for her, it's safety for the individual. So get even smarter and have situations that understand things like that, where it's like individual safety as opposed to safety of the masses. I also worry a lot about AI ethics and about who makes decisions and the devolution of authority. So AI algorithms tend to be fairly opaque, and what concerns me is who decides. Is it the developer? Is it the authority that's decided to employ that data? Who takes the responsibility when things go wrong? I was talking to Ian earlier when we were discussing this, and I said, if you had a AI on a video CCTV system that was able to detect when somebody was carrying a weapon or was carrying a knife or machete, and there's a guy walking down the road with some flowers under his coat because he wants to surprises his girlfriend or wife, and it doesn't understand flowers underneath a coat, so it decides that it's a weapon, and it calls out automatically an armed response or something like that. Somebody has to say, hang on, this guy wasn't doing anything wrong, but the AI got it wrong, and I don't know who takes the blame for that. AI bias and its inherent dangers we've talked about. If it's been trained on only guns and knives, what happens when it's flowers? I also worry about the greater attack surface for criminals. You've got individuals such as identity spoofing, making people look like they're other individuals and all that sort of thing. You've got issues around groups and bias and individual freedoms that I think need considering quite closely. And society as a whole, I think around the whole shift towards AI and surveillance and AI spoofing, the potential for bringing a city to its knees through unexpected consequences. Anybody old enough to have seen The Italian Job, where they throw a bike into the power station and mess around with the traffic lights, yeah, they have to do some very physical things. Well, in these day and age, as was demonstrated in the Berlin experiment by the street artist, I can't remember his name, Simon Vertek, who put 99 phones in a trolley and walked down Berlin street and effectively made Google Maps think there was a massive traffic jam in that situation. And anybody who was relying on that data got diverted completely away from that street. He managed to empty that street as far as from a digital perspective. So I think my conclusion is that we need to think very clearly, objectively and intelligently about how smart cities evolve and what does safety actually mean.
Thanks, Paul. And safety from a number of different vantage points, as you say, data being one of them. So Ian, I'll hand over to you. Cheer us all up.
I'll do my best. Yeah, I think I was struck by the number of times in our previous sessions tonight that the word trust was used. And I read somewhere that the countries that had dealt best with the coronavirus pandemic were those where there was a high level of trust of the government and institutions. I'm not quite sure where we are on some kind of spectrum in the UK. But I think it's very easy to pick out edge cases which make good stories. But actually, we've become used for some decades now to CCTV in our town centres. Maybe with the advent of intelligent smart TV backed by those AI models, yes, we can actually we can increase not only collective safety but individual safety as well. Things like crowd mood detection algorithms which enable the police or security to intervene in a particular situation in a targeted way that would keep us all safer. So as I said earlier, I'm worried about the risk of bias in AI models, but as with all technology, there's a maturity curve. We're probably at the beginning of this one. So yeah, I think on balance, it's always this thing that we're weighing up. How much of our individual freedom are we willing to give up to feel collectively safer?
Indeed. Okay, so hopefully we've given you all a bit of food for thought there. So same question again, over to you. Are smart cities safer for residents? Really interested to see what you all think of this one. I wonder if we'll get a few. It depends. Again, I'm giving you the arguments there. So if you need it, again, the QR code that you scan with your camera is on the bottom left. Slido.com, and the event code is CGI Smart Cities. We'll just spend a minute on this slide just as you're all hopefully voting away, and then the next slide we've your key takeaway from the session. So we perhaps haven't got time to take any questions, but if you do have any questions, you can input it on the next poll, and we can pick those up with the organisers and try and get those cascaded out. The audience is split. We've got 33% yes, no, not sure, it depends, not sure. It's a tricky one, this, isn't it? There's different elements to safety and it depends how you look at it. I think that's perhaps why we're getting the it depends point. We'll just give it a moment or two for it to settle. Yeah, so I think it depends is coming out as the winner, and then interestingly, no, we don't think, the majority don't think smart cities are safer for residents, or perhaps with the it depends, there is a majority there. It just depends on what procedures are put in place. Okay, well, thanks everyone very much for voting. Our last slide then, well, over to you again. What's your key takeaway from the session? This is just free text. You can input a few words if you've got a question, anything you'd like to follow up on, or perhaps, you know, from the overall session, you've just got some thoughts that you'd like to input, or perhaps if you've marked it depends, you can just give us a sentence or so on what your parameters were for that response. We've got a couple of minutes just before we all zoom back to the main thread. So we thought this would be quite good just to get your feedback. We'll just give it a minute. Hopefully you're all prefer the it depends as an answer. All of you got a response to that one? I feel like you may have a response to that one.
Yeah, I think that is very true. Security people sit on the fence and say, well, you know, you've got to balance the risk versus the opportunities and all that sort of thing. So I think it's very true that it needs a debate, and it needs intelligent debate. Is I think what I would characterize as, you know, that's what it depends is a really means, doesn't it? You have to balance very many different competing things.
Yeah, and I mean, some of the comments here, who checks the people who have the data? We've got more CCTV, it's not necessarily safer, and safety and being safe is all relative. Of course it is, different people have different perspectives on that, and different regions will have different perspectives as well. You know, perhaps there's an urban and a rural play, or different areas around the world will have a different view. So it's interesting, Ian, you picked up on the trust point. The most important factor in a smart city is trust. I think.
And also, I think that debate that Paul mentioned, it feels to me like we're at the beginning of that public debate. And yeah, there is that. Let's recall that in the 19th century, when trains were introduced, there were people who thought that if they travelled at more than 30 miles per hour, their heads would fall off. So we will look back, I think, in 50 years, and I think about some of the things we've discussed tonight and laugh, because that's how we make progress.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got cybersecurity solutions. I think as we're approaching 7:30, I think we will all zoom back into the main conference. I'm not sure we get a countdown, but yeah, cybersecurity solutions to make this world class. We'll definitely pick up the point there about an organisation to get in touch with. So thank you for that one. GDPR. Yeah, continues to be an ongoing challenge and opportunity for organisations, clearly. We need to think why smart cities following the same trends as present cities. It needs to sell itself as something for the future, not running it as a business. Yeah, that's a really interesting point, actually. Okay, we're bang on time. I expect us all to zoom back into the main conference any moment.